I'd like to call a meeting of Wednesday, August 17th to order. Please join us in the pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, and the first order of business is Edward Chauncey, 157 North Elm Street, culvert discussion. What's that down the back there? Oh, yeah. This is exactly, what are you looking for?
I'd like to get rid of the culvert that's on the property, so.
Okay, that's the instance of, and you've had several meetings with a lot of the planning board, conservation, and also Lenny Graff. Okay, I'd like to hear from one of you. I don't know which one wants to start. Lenny, would you like to start?
In fact, why don't I do it?
All right,
I got some paperwork and.
Okay,
and,
no.
You know, pictures are always easy to.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Connie, reading a little bit history, this is, culvert has been established sometime in the 1800s,
Yes, sir.
re-recorded in 1898, and that's a little bit of history.
Okay, let me just kind of run through it. The first sheet I gave you, in fact, I put a circle in blue.
Yeah.
That's the area in question. And what it does, it's a culvert underneath there, and it runs down onto Mr. Chauncey's property, and you can see the U-shaped contours. Well, the U-shape is delineating a swale because it runs down a swale. And if you look on the next sheet, which is a continuation of this map was done back in the 1970s for the town by the Old Colony Water Pollution Commission. And you'll see that it.
Do you have an extra copy of Mr. Chauncey?
In fact, I'll give him these.
Uh,
Mr. Earl, you can look on this one.
No, I can kind of wing it. I've
Okay.
gone through this many times.
Okay.
So there definitely is a culvert there, and what it does is it goes under North Elm Street, around through the back of Adam Korn's property, which is located on the corner of Stepping Stone Lane, which is the road to the McDonald School, goes under Stepping Stone Lane, up in behind Francis Avenue, and it drains that whole area. The next one is just a continuation of the map, but the next one is the 1897 County Commissioner's layout of North Elm Street, the one that's in dark scale. If you look over on the top at the far right as you look at it, that's where the railroad crossed, which is now the Baptist Church. The next property is where John Cruz is.
Billings?
Yeah, Edgar Billings owned the property. Then you come up further, there is a house and the match line E. The house is Mr. Chauncey's, and if you look, it's a little dashed line there. That is actually the culvert. That's the culvert under the road. So in 1897, the culvert was there, and then in 1937, the county commissioners came through, and they did another layout, and they also, at that time, there was an 18-inch clay pipe going under there. So there's been a culvert under there for the last almost 120 years that's documented. It was probably a stone culvert under there long before that, because in 1897 there were a good many houses on North Elm Street. North Elm Street went all the way to Brockton up to Copeland Street, so it was a major road back then. So what we're saying is it's been a culvert there for a long time. It's documented and who knows how many years beyond that. But the water comes through there. Now, if you can't just stop a culvert and reroute it. If you do, you're going to have to buy easements off of people to go through their property, go onto it. And I'll let Mr. Delano explain the problems with relocating something like that in the conservation and the Wetland Act, how that comes in. You just can't go altering water courses. But I'd prefer to hear from Mr. Delano on that aspect.
Okay, Mr.
Thank you.
Delano. Okay.
So if the culvert was eliminated, as Mr. Hurley mentions, it would alter the wetland areas up behind these houses, and that would be a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act. So we can't let that happen. That water has to be able to flow through there. If somebody wants to make a change, we, as a Conservation Commission, could put them through the process, and if they meet the performance standards, permit it, but it would have to meet the performance standards. So it's not impossible to do this on Mr. Chauncey's land, but to go on to these other private properties and correct a situation that's been there for all these years would require a big legal battle with the town and with DEP. So I would suggest that that's even out of the question. Not that the commission wouldn't work with somebody to try to do that, but it's just a very complicated and expensive proposition for the town to do. So I would say, I would advise not doing anything about changing that culvert.
Well, let me ask you another thing. The land behind it is owned by our water department. And of course, you gotta be very, very careful what you feed into that field for future use of the water.
That's correct.
Is that a consideration too? You looked into that part of it too?
The water that flows through that culvert then enters more or less a ditch, a drainage ditch, across Mr. Chauncey's property, downslope to the water department's land that could be a future well site. And that vegetation that's in that drainage ditch is absorbing any of the pollutants that come from the
Filters
roadways.
towards it.
Filters it,
So the,
makes the quality of that water very good by the time it gets to the potential well site.
Lenny, you've been here
From the
day one.
highways standpoint, we don't have a flooding condition there. We haven't gotten any calls from the police department of flooding. Everything is draining naturally. So from the highway standpoint, everything is working fine. Basically, I will serve at the board's pleasure as to what they decide.
Okay, Mr. Chauncey, you got any, my board, you got any questions?
I don't have any.
Have any? All right, Mr. Chauncey.
Well, as we all know, there were two sides to every story. To begin with, I keep calling it illegal culvert. I was approached by one of the highway superintendents. If the town was to put in pipe from the street to out back, would I be willing to put it on the deed? And I said, well, sure. Why, is it illegal if I don't? Or is it illegal now? And the answer wasn't given, and the individual wasn't. That's just one. Now, as for,
We're talking about illegal, and in this, one of these memos here, I see, it says it was recorded, so what significance of that recording? This thing was recorded, so it's not,
it was never recorded, sir. I went to the Plymouth County deed, and I went back to 1870, and it was not on the deed at all.
all right,
If I could just clarify that, and you probably could do it as well, but I think what was recorded is the county layout showing an existing culvert, an existing drain system that had been there many years before that, because that is an
97.
1897 recorded layout of North Elm Street. Obviously, there are houses there. People petition the town and the county to make a county layout for a street when they want improvements on the street. So there were houses already there well before before that recording was done in the 1800s. So you have a town growing with houses springing up along a cart path. Eventually, they want to have some road improvements done, so they petition the town, and the town petitions the county. They create a layout, which is a legal document for having the right to call it a street. And at that point, we've shown that the culvert was there. By a matter of legal principles, and town council can be consulted if anyone wants to question my experience with this, but out of the fact that it's been there all these years, the town has a prescriptive right to maintain that culvert. And so when Mr. Chauncey says that it's illegal, I would disagree with that term and say that the town has a legal right under a prescriptive law, which means after so many years of use without an objection from the landowner. And that was there well before any of his predecessors in his ownership of that property were there. So those people way back then acquiesced to this, and by prescription, the town has a right to keep it there.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, let me go ahead of where Mr. Delano was talking about. With the reason I wanted to show you the contour map with the fact that the swale goes up there, that's been there since the last glacier. That's been there before white man, before the Indians. That's been there since the last glacier when it has pulled back. It's been there. It's been there for thousands of years. That water has traveled down through there. So it's a natural course. If we were to do something to add additional onto that, then the town would have to acquire an easement. But what is there is the natural flow of the water. It's always been that way. The water has always flowed there. The only thing that was put in there was a culvert so that man could get across it. Probably was a couple of stepping stones at first, or it might have been a forge, but it's been then some kind of a culvert, a little bridge has been there as long as they were going across there. So when to call it illegal, it isn't illegal. It's something that was put in where a natural flow of water, and you don't need to get an easement on the either side of that, because you have the right to flow natural water. It's anybody that has any water that crosses over the property. If the land on one side is higher, it comes across your property. It's the same thing here. The land on the other side was higher than his.
All right, before I call on anybody else, I have a public hearing there, continuous, and I want to get that over with, and then I'll come right back to you. A motion for a trading post public hearing. Motion to reopen the public hearing, which has been continued from July 20th, 2016, for the consideration of revoking the secondhand license for trading post secondhand job. Is there a motion to reopen that hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, to hear it. And I'd like to call on Dave, who we heard from the gentleman. Mr. Madden?
Yeah, so I spoke to the proprietor earlier today. He has unfortunately not come in to comply with any of the requests from the board over the past month. However, he explained to me that he did have a medical situation without violating any of his HIPAA rights. I won't go into any of the disclosures that he made to me. However, he asked me, and I acknowledged to him that I would ask the board, is that you are meeting again on September 7th. He believes that he would be able to come into compliance between now and then. So he is requesting that we extend the hearing until September 7th. And if the board is so inclined to agree, then I would ask for the board to take a vote to continue the hearing until 7 o'clock on September 7th.
We've bent over backwards for quite a while here. I just hope that if the board sees fit, that they will give him the 2 weeks. This time, he has to make some kind of a move there, because nothing has been done.
I'll move the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? So we'll move it in 2 weeks. What's the date?
It's 3 weeks and it's September 7th
September 7th.
at
okay.
7 PM.
And that's in the motion? Move it, okay, in a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Move
you.
Mr. Chairman, move to continue the hearing at the following meeting.
to. There's a second to that.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, back. Anything else? Yeah, okay, Ed? Now, this has been a lot of years gone by. How come now you've come up at this time to put for this with all the years that have passed over? I know that you had some concerns probably years back there, but now you seem to be making sort of a priority out of this, that you would like to see something happen. Why all of a sudden now?
Because I keep being called a liar, or there's a credibility gap, what I'm saying.
I don't think anybody's calling you a liar. I never heard that.
There's a credibility gap in this, what I'm saying. They're all correct. The spring puts that culvert, runs under stepping stone back of Adam Long's, and it comes across from my house across the street. Mr. Hurley was kind enough a few years ago, showed a pipe that came up. He was able to take a picture, or someone did. He says this is from the 1890s, and I said, fine. The water came to that point. They have no idea. Nobody in this room has any idea where that water went. I'm contending that in 1956, the water came across the street and turned upright and went towards Brockton. And across from Stepping Stone was another catch basin, and the water went in there and out back. Sabelli's house to the left of my house, as well as the old Peterson house. Those houses weren't there. Mr. Peterson bought those houses after World War II. He built one and then requested the culvert that was there to be moved. And after a year or two or three, the house in 1956 was being sold, and the town proceeded to put the culvert within 50 or 60 feet of the house. I'm saying that in the 1890s or earlier, they wouldn't have done it. And that's why I brought the map of 1832, which denotes the houses on North Elm Street, as well as the rest of the streets in the town of West Bridgewater, of which the house that I'm living in is S. Howard. And if it's not the father of John Howard, Howard Street Seminary, with the police and fire department on, it's an uncle. And in the 1890s, they're not going to put a culvert 50 feet from the house to the right of the house and have it go up. That is my point of contention, and that's why.
How is this affecting your land? Is your land wet as a result of this?
Most definitely. Lost a couple of feet of soil, topsoil, good topsoil, for the extension of maybe 40, 50 feet, and then it tapers off. The water meanders out there. If you go to the other catch basin and looking back in the back of the old Peterson house, you can see the land from the stone wall coming over, the property from my house going over. And you can see like a path down the middle. And that's where the water went up until 1956. Nobody in here can prove that it wasn't there or done in 56. The only thing I can say is that when you go up and down any street in this town and you look at the catch basins, they're all going from the Hockomock to Brockton. It's on the right-hand side. Every now and then, you might see another, those big metal rings where they have the water collectively joined and whatever. And I think in 56 that was put in, and not before. I don't believe there are any records. You can't prove it to me that said, yeah, well, in 1820 or 1890 this was put in. Nobody can tell you that. It's guesswork. It's guesswork on these gentlemen's part, as everyone else in here.
But where it is now, if you go towards Cruz's house, okay, the road goes up.
Yes, sir.
It's like in the place where it should be. Because if you move it anywhere else, I mean, you can't go uphill with it,
I'm
okay? And then the other way,
I'm in total
so
agreement, sir.
we don't,
That
we
was
we don't
the-
mind, trying to correct some kind of thing. But if we're gonna cause a problem somewhere else, and we could be causing a big problem by shifting the water, it just
The
seems to
answer
be.
could be found quickly. The pipe is only 4 foot down, and I'm saying the pipe is still there. And if you go at either end from Cruz's house to Peterson's house and pick a spot and dig down 4 foot, you're gonna find the pipe that's still there. And vindicate me. And what would it cost to dig a 4 foot hole?
I don't know, I'm a little confused on what pipe you're talking about now.
I'm saying the pipe and the workings, when the water came from the culvert across from Adam Quam's, came across the street,
Right, which is shown on these maps.
shown on the map, went towards Brockton to the other catch basin, to the right of the Peterson house, and then shot out in my field anyway. You're not gonna put a culvert next to a Howard house. Not in the 1890s, but they did in 56. Time goes on, time passes, and nobody cares anymore. That's the basis of my little fight here.
Yes,
Could I ask Mr. Chauncey to try to clarify this, because I'm like Selectman Lawrence is, I'm confused about what
Right.
he's trying to say. Are you saying that it came across the street and then headed north towards Brockton
Yes,
at where the culvert is right today?
Didn't it just flow down from that direction?
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, so I'm going to jump in because we've really spent a considerable amount of time on this. As the board knows, is that we've had very few and limited resident complaints come before the board. And the reason being is because all the people in this room, collectively and individually, we've always attempted to try to mitigate any issue before it gets here. So we have spent many hours working on this issue with Mr. Chauncey directly and indirectly. The letter that you have before you in your packet, which is dated November 12th, 2015, is a 5-page comprehensive overview as to the many years that these gentlemen here spent with Ed prior to me with the previous administrator, and then that I was involved in October of 2015 as well. What Mr. Chauncey is contending is that to the right of his house, if you were standing at his house looking at the Rose McDonald School, is that there's a catch basin at 171. And what he believes is that that water flowed from that catch basin or water outlet over onto the property. So what we did is that besides the gentleman in this room, I also had 2 highway laborers come out on that day. We opened up every single manhole. We did it at the request of Mr. Chauncey as to whatever hole he wanted to open, we opened. And when we opened up 171, it was expected from Mr. Chauncey that there was going to be some type of an opening or a gap where this 4-foot pipe would be. Please understand, is that when we open up a manhole, the pipe is not there. When you look down, you're already 3 to 4 feet below grade. And at that point, Mr. Chauncey looked at it and he said, boy, quote, someone did a really good mason job, end quote, because he still believed that somebody had actually covered up that area. But if you're looking at it, again, maybe, I mean, anything's possible, but it doesn't look like that's probably what occurred. And then what I did above and beyond that was that when we came back, is that thanks to the technology of Google, I use Google Earth, and I am able to pinpoint with precise accuracy as to what the elevation levels are of where all the manholes are. And unfortunately, where Mr. Chauncey's house sits, is that he sits in a V. So if you were to travel towards Mr. Cruz's house, or let's call it towards the Hockomock Plaza, you're going to elevate about 5 feet in a quarter of a mile. So all of that water naturally or man-made with a water drainage system is going to find itself at the bottom of that V. If you were to travel north towards Brockton, it elevates almost 6 feet in that location. So short of a pump chamber, the water is never going to be able to push towards Brockton naturally, and therefore it would come back towards that V as well. There are 4 catch basins in addition to where the water is coming from naturally across the street in the woods. And Mr. Chauncey is correct. It all flows towards that culvert, and that culvert then drains the water into the field that goes through his property and into the backfield. And as Mr. Hurley has illustrated, we definitively know that the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds has a culvert listed there in 1898, most likely codifying actions that had taken place earlier. Mr. Chauncey has never contested the fact that it's been there that long. His contention is the fact that no one with any paperwork can prove that somebody actually put the culvert there with the permission of the families that existed there at that time or the families that existed there after the fact. And he explained to me, I mean, we had lengthy conversations about this, that he recalls as a young child in 1956, standing on the porch with his mother. He remembers that at that point, there was a huge drop-off. And if you were to stand at his property, as he said, the culvert is about 50 to 60 feet away from his house. It's about 4 to 5 feet below the foundation level of his house. And it is also about 4 or 5 feet below the grade of the road. And he said at that point, and maybe about 20 feet from the road. And so what he said was at that point, there was a drop. So you had the road, you had a drop in this ugly looking culvert. And that the town at that point came, did a whole bunch of fill, and made it look a whole lot nicer. And Mr. Chauncey said that him and his family watched the town do that. Now, partly they were pretty happy because it didn't look good. And so they were happy because it actually improved the look of the lot. However, Mr. Chauncey also claims, and he doesn't have direct privy to this because obviously he was a young child, not his fault, but that nobody gave the town permission to do it. Now, truthfully, I scratch my head a little bit because working in town government, I have a hard time believing that town people just one day said, let's go on private property, drop a whole bunch of dirt and make somebody else's place look better. But let's assume that's what they did. If there was no action from the homeowner at that point contesting it or filing some type of a grievance or attempting to take some action, 75 years later, as Mr. Hurley and Mr. Delano have said, through prescriptive law, we did what we had to do at that time, and nobody's ever contested the culvert actually existed before that. The only way to really mitigate this is for us to dig up the culvert, put in a pump chamber, and push the water somewhere else. And the only way you're going to do this is if you spend at least 6 figures. You're going to spend a ton of money because you are going to attempt to unnaturally, if that's a word, push water somewhere where it doesn't naturally want to go. And from a public safety standpoint, I can only envision the following probably occurred, is that in the 1800s, as water naturally flowed down this road, obviously pre-asphalt, it probably froze over and it probably washed the road out. And that's why they would have had to do something at that time from a public safety standpoint to make sure they were able to direct and control the flow of water so it didn't ice up in the wintertime, and in the springtime during heavy rains as they had a pool of water there. That's what most likely occurred. Now, Mr. Chauncey is absolutely correct. There's no paperwork to justify what I'm saying. But where everybody in this room is smart. We all understand that water finds its natural level. We all agree, including Mr. Chauncey, he's at the lowest part of the road. And we all agree that sometime in the 1800s, this was recorded because that was done at that point. At this point, it exists. There's nothing else that we can do about it unless, again, the town chose to spend a lot of money. And when I say 6 figures, I am guaranteed to be in 6 figures to do the amount of engineering work that you would have to do. And that's assuming that you could get Mass DEP approval to do it. And then you would have somebody else on North Elm Street that would be upset because the water would be flowing in that direction instead.
Okay, board members, Anthony?
I have nothing, just take it under advisement.
You have anything else?
Nope. Thank you.
Chauncey?
Just one little item. If the water was to go from the present culvert towards Brockton, it would be going on town property. Is to the left of the stone wall of the Peterson house for 22 feet is the right-of-way to the pine grove that's in the back, which John here is trying to get that back as a picnic area or whatever, which in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s was nothing more than teenage drinking and drugs. So, Boy Scouts tried to get in there in the early 2002 or 2004. Mrs. Peterson was still alive, and an individual was going as a Eagle Scout, and he wanted to do that as his project. Clean up the road, put the bridge back in, put the picnic tables out in Pine Grove. Mrs. Peterson said no, and that was the end of it. They couldn't go forward with it. And there's not one individual that abuts that property that I know of that wants to have that Pine Grove back into that kind of a situation.
Well, the only thing is, you heard him say it'd be so expensive what I do. We'd like to accommodate you, and then the water has to go uphill, and then you create just another problem.
I'm saying the pipe is still there, the old pipe, and it would be at that kind of an angle. It would be higher at this end, and as it went to Brockton, it would be lower. It was easy then, it could be easy now, you don't need a pump.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Where's this pipe, on whose land is it on?
What pipe?
The one that you say is there 4 feet below?
Right under the tap.
Oh, you're saying
the
in the
street.
roadway?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any running, any running that you know of?
Make a motion, we take it under advisement.
Okay, you have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, gentlemen.
Aye.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, approve the minutes of June 22nd.
Moved.
Is there a second? All's in favor?
Aye.
Approve minutes of July 6th.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Except for review minutes, July 20th.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Tracy?
All in favor?
Aye.
Moved. Approve high-value purchase and policy. Okay,
Do you want to discuss this at all? Or?
Tracy?
is he,
I'm locked out. This is our first time receiving it, so I'd just like to take it on, take it as a first review and put it on the agenda at the next meeting.
okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
As far as which department we want it to be applicable to, my feeling is that we should include all departments except for the school. Do we want to discuss this now or at the next meeting? So that David can have a hopefully final version.
Well, didn't we talk a little bit about this, David? Maybe it should include other also, right?
Yes, I spoke to each one of you, and the general consensus is that it should be a town-wide policy excluding 2 items. And Selectman Kinahan, if I recall correctly, I think we were talking the school and the water department.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes, the water department as well.
The water
Sorry.
department was in that thing.
How do we govern elected boards that are independent of us?
Because at the end of the day, the Board of Selectmen signed the warrant. So you just don't have to sign the warrant if you don't choose to. You have statutory authority to choose not to sign the warrant.
But you want to have a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I would,
yeah.
but then why exclude those other two departments?
Because one, in particular to the school department, is that once you appropriate funds into it, it is their budget. For example, if we appropriate funds at town meeting into the police budget, and at the end of the year, we need to transfer it to the highway budget because we have a shortfall, town meeting has that authorization and ability to do so. Town meeting can't even transfer money out of the school budget for any purpose. It is their money. That's part of the Ed Reform Act that passed in 1992.
Okay.
So I don't think that we could have jurisdiction over that.
Yep.
The second is because the water department is under the water, their revenue stream is a separate revenue stream than what the selectmen oversee, where it's water rates. So I think that would make sense as well.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so we'll put it on the agenda for next,
For approval at the next meeting.
your second on that?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so voted. Approve the town clerk's warrant for the 2016 state primary.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So voted. Act on the request to grant additional compensation. Karen Lavin, Administrative Assistant to the Building Department.
This is pretty standard, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
A second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So voted, unanimous. Approve contract with ComClean, agreement for janitorial service. Basically, with my conversation with David, it's the same as last year. Dave?
That is correct.
Okay. And they've done a good job. Is there a motion to award that contract?
Moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approve the bucket truck memorandum, you have that written out, and of course, it's going to be garage in Bridgewater, and it'll be under the task force, and it will be available to us also, if we need it, in garage in Bridgewater.
I just want to thank David for working on the agreement. I think it's a win-win for the police department and our highway and forestry department that still have access to it, and it will be maintained, and
Thank you.
costs will be shared. So I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Action on Park Day, I think you being involved with the Park Day would probably be just,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to rescind myself from the vote and discussion as a president of the West Bridgewater Lions Club, and we're very involved in the organization of Park Day. I will be taking part in the discussion, but as a resident, as a member of the public, not as a member of the board, and I'm available to answer any questions the board may have.
is a motion to grant the license, and generally, we don't charge a fee for it.
I'd also like to disclose that I'm also a member of the Lions Club, but I don't partake in the production or management of Park Day. So I believe that I can vote in unbiased fashion, and I will
Well, I'll make a motion, and you second it then. Oh, vice
You made the
versa.
motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I'll second it. Okay, and that'll be without the charge of fee, also in that motion?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Jerry, you have any questions on that?
No, there are two parts to the motion. One is for the Lions Club one-day liquor license. The second part is for the use of the park. That's a simple form to fill out with the Parks Department. However, the town does have some regulations. They don't allow tents, alcohol, after hours, or amplified music. So what we're really asking the board for with that is a waiver of those policies.
Okay, I'll put that all in the motion. You get that all over there, did you get it? Okay. And we have a second to that?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so voted.
Recuse.
Okay, ratify approval of citizens' request to hold collection at transfer station on August 13th, 2016 to benefit victim of the August 8th, 2016 fire at 264 Matfield Street. Okay, this has been done before, I think, one other fire we had here.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I did attend the wake last night. That's a very, very terrible thing to happen. But I know that the people of this town do want to help.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to point out there are more than 19 volunteers that took part in the collections that day at the transfer station. There are over 450 cars that visited the transfer station, a number of them not just there to throw away their trash, but actually just to donate. The group at the transfer station raised $3,517, with $1,758.50 going to each family. And that was organized by resident Tracy McCarthy, who's been very active. She also organized it the last time for one day, and a last-minute group of volunteers. They did a wonderful job and should be commended. I think the McCarthy family, the fire victim families have been extremely emotional over the support from the town. And again, this is only the money that's gone to them from that one day. So a substantial outpouring of support for our brothers and sisters in our town. So again,
we
thank you
thank
to
them very
everybody that reached out the last time and this time.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay. Appoint Police Chief Victor Flaherty to School Building Committee to replace
We need an
retired.
official vote?
Oh, take official vote on that, sorry.
I'll move to ratify the,
Ratify it. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye, okay, so ratified. Appoint Police Chief Vic Flaherty to School Building Committee to replace retired Chief Donald Clark.
Moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, communication from boards and commissions and town officials. You have any comments?
Oh, yes, as we just voted, September 11th is the West Bridgewater Park Day.
Yeah.
I know the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, PTO, music parents, numerous organizations in town are already going to be there. The Historic Commission, the Historic Society, the Open Space and Recreation Commission, Police Department, Fire Department are all taking part in the event. If there's any organizations in town that want to be part of the event, the festivities, and help raise money for your individual organizations, it's open. You can send an email to wbparkday@aol.com, and we'll be happy to accommodate you, make sure everybody's there to take part in the great community day. It's all these organizations that really make the event what it is, and we're celebrating 25 years this year, and it's a great activity, and every year it seems to get more and more popular, and I just want to make sure everybody knows they're welcome if they need an avenue to come make a little money for their groups.
Yeah, it's a great family day for everybody, and everybody has a good time. Just hope that we have good weather.
Put my word in now.
Okay, it's now 7:30, and Mike is here, building inspector, interview. Mike, why don't you just come up front here, and how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Very good, very good. Mike White, candidate for building inspector and zoning officer, town of West Bridgewater.
Sit down if you want to.
Sit down and relax. And so, Mike, how many years have you been at this? I know you've been at it for quite a few years, but
In the town of Bridgewater, 6 years as the commissioner,
years?
and 2 years prior to that, the assistant local inspector under David Moore.
okay. And you are a commissioner, you're not just a
Yes.
local.
No, I'm a certified commissioner.
We don't have to wait for the 18 months when.
Yeah, no, that's all behind me.
Yeah, I did talk to Solari, and he told me that you know your stuff. That's what he said. And of course, you've been working in there with Karen, and kind of standing by there with, and I want to thank you for that, because we certainly need help in the interim period here. The only thing that I ever heard there is as far as I know, in Bridgewater, it's a lot bigger town, and there's probably a lot more activity. But the only thing I don't call it a negative crime, but is out in the field. Are you gonna be able to take care, I know now in Bridgewater, I think Steve still comes in and helps for the overload there as far as getting out in the field. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Are you going to be able to handle this? See, our money is made by, the permits and as fast as we can get them in. And it's very important to us that, those permits of service and I know that maybe it takes a little bit of time for some of them, but you have any problem with being prompt on those permits and trying to get them out as fast as you can?
No, that's basically the number one priority, and we're actually mandated by law to get the permits out the door within 30 days or sooner. And then the inspections, where you have a certain time frame to perform those. So those are the two top priorities in zoning, and if we were falling behind, which we haven't the last couple of weeks, it's been really getting busy in there with a lot of permits coming through and a lot of inspection requests. And we've been keeping up, but it's starting to, for some reason, really ramp up lately. But Bridgewater had a huge surge. Generally, we were a bedroom community, and the last couple of years, we saw a serious surge in commercial activity with hotels and a 300-unit apartment complex and like 10 to 15,000 square foot commercial businesses. And I had no assistance at all, so we kind of got swamped. And I think 500 new houses permitted to be built. So it just came. The economy slowly crawled out of the hole over the last few years and really kicked in recently, and things are really humming out there.
Would you call yourself a people's person, or?
I try to be. The more friendly you
That's
can
what
be and the more that you can help people, the easier it is.
We are a service organization.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, you have any questions?
Yeah, why are you looking to come to West Bridgewater and leave Bridgewater?
I think we've had for about 5 years a written mutual aid agreement between Bridgewater and West Bridgewater. So generally, I would only cover if Steve was on vacation or if he was out sick, and got a taste of what it was like here. And it seemed like there was more of a family atmosphere between all the departments in the community. In the last, I'm not sure, 4 or 5 weeks, I've been totally running the department, which I've got more involved with a lot more departments than I normally would have just covering if he was on vacation. And it seems like I said, it's Bridgewater, we have a team atmosphere. It seems like you guys have more of a family type atmosphere, and everybody's been fantastic to work with, especially Karen. She's been under a lot of extra pressure not having someone in there every hour of the day. It's a very demanding department, and I've been doing the best I can, giving her 2 or 3 hours a day, trying to keep the permits and inspections going, but it's a lot on her by herself to answer the calls and a lot of people with a lot of questions.
Based on what you've seen, do you think the workload's manageable?
Yes, I believe it is. Like I said, it's been tough the last few weeks. Things have really been ramping up. And in Bridgewater, the last, I think, a week and a half ago, my office, the roof leaked and flooded out our offices. On top of, we're trying to pack and move the entire department back into the academy building in the center of town. So it's been crazy. Everything got flooded out on top of trying to pack the entire department up and get ready for a move at the end of this week. But I think full-time someone in here that it's manageable. Like I said, we're struggling a little because I'm trying to cover 2 communities by myself, basically.
Yeah, understandable. Could you explain how you determine when to sign off on a permit and when you don't? For example, if a business is about to open and you're completing the final inspection and the only thing that you find wrong is a light on the exit sign, for example, is out, what do you do in that instance? If they're ready to open, the only thing that you find is an exit sign.
I guess it would depend on the situation. If it was a daycare center with kids or something, if there's multiple exits. But typically, we'd obviously request them to fix it. Most of the time, if we're in there doing that, there's still the electricians and there's crew still there, and they usually hop right on those things and fix it immediately. But typically, we wouldn't halt it unless it was the only exit, and it was a daycare or something, and that was a life safety issue.
So you'd sign off on it, and then what do you do after that?
We would just follow up, go back and make sure that the issue is corrected.
All right, and one last question. David had explained to me that you're looking to take home the car. Could you just tell me why you think that's necessary, or why you want to be able to take the car home?
I've been in Bridgewater doing that, mostly for after-hours emergencies, which I'm not sure the frequency. I responded to that Matfield house fire a couple Mondays ago at 5 a.m. But that, and at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, doing inspections, is actually a lot of subdivisions going on close to the border of Bridgewater that I would just right from home go do if it's a foundation or something, that I don't have to wake up the homeowner. I just go take care of those and not have to drive 4 miles here, get the car, drive 4 miles back, and go do that inspection. But more so for after-hour emergencies, to have the equipment, any emergency equipment, and the placards and things like that, which I was handcuffed at that fire. I didn't have the stuff I needed to placard it with me right on the spot, and had to come back and get that stuff and go back out.
Jerry?
Yeah, welcome back. I think you interviewed here one time before. I didn't recognize you until you, I didn't realize that till you walked in the door. Yeah, Mike, in Bridgewater, are you evaluated your performance by your, rather when you worked as assistant, or are you evaluated by the town administrator or by the selectmen?
Yes, I believe we've had a pretty big turnover of managers in the last 6 years, so I think that 5 or 6 years ago we were evaluated, but he left and went to Hanover. We never got the results. I think that Mike Dutton, the current manager, evaluated us, but he got so busy we never got the results back.
Well, if you were to evaluate you as a manager and you were working for yourself, what would you say you need to work on?
Probably trying to tone my work ethic down. I'm a workaholic. It's built into my DNA, so I think I tend to give too much
All right.
to the job.
I guess that would be the also the biggest attribute you bring. I'm sure they're proud that you put 100% in.
Yeah.
One of the West Bridgewater, we've had some great years in the building department, and we've had some we had some rough years prior to that. And one of our big things is we're here for the residents. We want to make sure the residents are treated well. We want to make sure appointments are held. I guess more of a statement than a question, but it's a very top priority that we continue that great tradition that we had with Steve of showing up for appointments, communicating with contractors if and when you're late. How do you do that now?
I use technology heavily, so in Bridgewater we have Microsoft Outlook for the calendar, so I utilize that heavily, especially when we have interaction or common inspections with other departments, or if it's a final, and most of the time the contractors, if they can get all of us there at once, they'd prefer that. I'll utilize that and invite whoever's got to be there. Then they respond, and that I know who's committed to come and who's not. The same with the contractors.
You feel you're pretty good at communicating when you're going to be a little bit late or early or whatnot with the contractors or the applicants or the homeowners?
Typically each day what I would try to do is see what there is for inspections and set up some kind of route that makes sense, so I'm not ping-ponging all over town. Try to go in a nice flow, and usually that works out, and you can set the times up.
I
Allocate what you need. A commercial project's gonna take a little more time than going to look at a rough frame in a kitchen, a renovation or something like that. But you try to block the time out, and
I'm very proud of the direction the department's been going in. I think they've been very user-friendly, and I just want to continue to see it not only go in that direction, but continue to really reach out and make things simple for businesses. I'm not saying we look the other way, but we want to make sure things are mainstreamed, people aren't held up, and businesses know that it's a welcoming place to come, and it's just a top priority, I think, the entire board. So thank you for your input.
yeah, that's how I feel too in Bridgewater. Actually, it's echoed here doing soft walkthroughs on some of the commercial buildings with the fire department, electrical and plumbing and gas inspector, so they know up front if there's any major headaches when we come to do the real final, or what we'll be looking for, so it goes off without a hitch.
Excellent. Very good. I have no further questions.
Okay, Dave, do you have any comments?
Sure, the only, before I get to the question I want to pose, there's one item that I do want to let everyone know is that when we started this process, we posted for the job. It was posted for over 30 days. We received a total of 12 applications, but 5 who were qualified, 4 ultimately interviewed. In that screening committee, of which I was not on, but 5 prominent people within the town that were on it, named Mr. White and 1 other person as a finalist. And so it was envisioned that tonight you would have 2 people to interview. On Monday, that second candidate dropped out, and so that's why before you tonight you just have 1 candidate. There is no doubt at all that Mr. White is more than qualified for the position. We have checked his background, and everything checks out. So I want to make sure the board had a comfort level with those items. My one question that I would like to pose is really because I'd like to make sure that the board is comfortable with the following answer. Is that part of the job description for the building inspector is also overseeing the building. And over this past town meeting, we had a handful of capital budget items that were approved specific to the town hall. For example, we have a minor leak in the roof that has to be replaced. We have the building department that has received funds to be able to remodel, and also the same thing on the first floor. And I just want the board to feel comfortable that you have the capability and the inclination to be able to oversee those projects, to make sure that those general contractors are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and also to make sure that we maximize tax dollars the way it's spent in the building.
Yep, I don't have a problem with that. I've actually noticed the other day that the elevator certificate expired, and we got that set up for the state inspector to come out. Like I said previously, I'd have to get a little better grasp of exactly how they were doing or what they were doing for maintenance, and probably put it on an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of when things were getting done and to know when they need to be redone, maintenance items.
Well, that's, I think, one of the things we want to make sure, again, it's a small town, so it's sometimes it's going to seem like a one-man show down there, but one of the things, just routine, not only, like you said, routine maintenance with the boilers, but what rooms need to be painted, what routine maintenance needs to be done so it doesn't fall behind.
Yeah.
And the town hall should look presentable at all times, and a clean, safe place for people to come when they have to. So, again, we don't think you're a custodian by all means, but the director of maintenance for the building, I think, is what we want to make clear as part of the position.
Oh, okay. One other question. If the board votes for you, when will you be available? You got to notice to Bridgewater, or?
Yeah, I would want to give them at least 2 weeks, and I would continue the coverage that I'm doing now
Okay.
to hold things over until then.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have no questions.
I'd like to make a motion to take this under advisement.
You had one in the audience, if you're accepting
Oh,
audience
yeah,
questions.
excuse me. Go ahead.
We really do need a building inspector very badly. It's very busy there,
Yeah.
and I think this should have been brought up a long time ago, being a resident. And I know we're taking some money to have our room done, but if you, as I said, if you hire Mike, I think he should get the money he deserves, because, I mean, we can go without fixing our room right now. Allocate that money to him, because you saved a lot of money so far since Steve had me, and Karen's been doing that job. And I'm trying to help her myself a lot, because I volunteer, my hours are done, so I've been volunteering, and we really need something, and this shouldn't have happened, I'm telling you. We shouldn't have waited this long. And if you could see the phone calls that, Mike has, it's on the desk right now, and all of it has to be done. It's tremendous.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion to take on advisement. We can work out those details and get back to Mike.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'd rather make it contingent, offering the job contingent upon agreeing on compensation?
Yeah, well, that's basically what we'd be talking about.
Well, no, so we'd actually be able to offer it to him immediately instead of having to vote on it at the next meeting?
Yeah,
if we,
can make the
And then we could
motion.
ratify the contract at the next agreement.
Yeah.
Right,
I'll second, I'll withdraw my motion and second Anthony's.
all right, you second your motion then. As soon as we agree on it, we can put them on.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
All right,
Aye. Mike, thanks for coming in.
All right,
congratulations.
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's see where we were. I think you're the last one to talk on the pack. Is there anything else on
Nope, we're down to correspondence.
correspondence from the public? Determine the course of action. Anybody from talk? Okay, there's none. I'll move on. Act on 61A notice intent to sell and convert to other uses a lot 19A on Copeland Street, Coit. This is a piece of property that they want to build a house. It would be just north of Mr. Coit's house there, and we want to take it out of the 61A.
Mr. Chairman, I think in the spirit of cooperation with the family to help take care of that farmland up there, I'd like to make a motion that we forego our rights under the 61A to acquire the property. I'd also like to commend the administrator, who's already got, as required, it needs to be sent to numerous other boards and commissions, committees. He's already done so, and the correspondence have already come back with no interest in the property. So rather than take the 30, 60, or 90 days, whatever it is we can, I'd like to waive that and just waive our right to purchase the property.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, so voted. Recommended the appointment of Mark Dangola, Assistant Plumbing and Gas Inspector. Does anybody know him, or is this coming in from Mr. Cruz, or?
I
It
did
is
speak.
coming in from Mr. Cruz, that is correct.
I did speak to Mr. Cruz. It's highly recommended that we go forward. As you know, John acted as the assistant plumber for years, and then as the plumber, as his dad, who was the plumbing inspector, was sick, he acted as acting plumbing inspector for a long time, and he's been doing it solo right now, so I think it is important that we get this moving forward. And I'll make a motion to go forward with the appointment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So voted. 4, public comment period. No comments. Okay. Town Administrator's Report. DPW reorganization update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at the last couple of meetings, this has been a topic of discussion. So I've carried out the board's wishes. I have spoken to all members of the staff of both the highway and the forestry divisions, including the respective superintendents and the clerical staff that works over there as well. In addition, I've also spoken to the union representative from AFSCME. The union, as I anticipated, but the union has some concerns, which obviously we would have to work through and would take some time, but they have some concerns and they'll be part of the process. I've also heard from the chairman of the Water Commissioners, Chairman Azak. And Chairman Azak is actually interested in seeing as to whether or not, if we're going to merge the highway and the forestry departments, to potentially look at also merging the water department and create it as a real DPW department, as you would see in many other municipalities. He has had that conversation with his board, and his other two commissioners, Mr. Hurley and Mr. Snell, are not in favor of that. However, obviously one is and two isn't. But Mr. Azak is hoping that as we go forward in this process, that we could include the water department in its discussions, and therefore we can see as to where we would like to go. Please keep in mind that the highway and the forestry merger is purely into the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, and a simple vote of this board, it can implement that. When it comes to the water commissioners and the water board, because it is a separate revenue stream, and it also has different statutory rights, that would require at least a town meeting vote, if not a referendum, and probably takes 12 to 18 months. It would also include legislative approval as well. But I just want to inform you that earlier, when we had talked about this and we thought maybe we'd be able to move a little bit quicker on this, is that if there is a lot of interest from the water department or from people in town that would like to incorporate it, this would certainly slow the process down. But if that's what everybody wants to do, then that's what we should do.
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Yep.
Well, I was just going to say, it's come to my attention that the highway superintendent's not going to resign. I don't see any, not going to retire, so I don't really see any need to go any further with the discussion about the merger at this time.
Yeah, and that was going to be my last statement is that as this process has unfolded, I have received and forwarded over to you a letter from Highway Superintendent Graff that he is now contemplating not retiring. So if he is not going to retire, then obviously he would be part of the mix. If the board then chose not to do a merger, then I would assume that you're saying that you would keep it the same. I mean, I'm not sure, but.
My proposal was because of the announcement of a retirement. If Lenny's going to stay on, that's great, especially seeing his retirement was going to come in the wintertime, so it'd be great to have his expertise. So with him not retiring, I don't think there's any need to go any further with the discussion.
I mean, if we can't have any savings, it's fine, discontinue it.
But that really requires a vote. It was only an investigation, and you reported back, so,
Yeah, the board never took a formal vote to merge.
right.
The only thing I would ask is that if the discussion now is that we would not go forward with this, then two things. One is I would like to communicate it to all parties to let them know that at this point we wouldn't be going forward on the merger. And the second thing is that Superintendent Graff's contract is up at the end of the year. He has a 60-day notice period in the contract, as we all do, myself included, is that I would want to make sure I formally involved him, so that way, if he wants to renew his contract to stay on as highway superintendent, he has that right.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we send all correspondence necessary and go no further with the merger.
There was a second to that?
Second?
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right, the next one is Council on Aging. There had been some discussion in the past about whether or not we keep it just as a Council on Aging or we do it also as a community center. I know in speaking to Selectman Lawrence, the thought process now is to maintain it as a Council on Aging at this point. And so I'm looking for some direction from the board because I would like to know what we would do going forward in order to be able to permanently name the next director.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I had a discussion with Bruce Holmquist, I believe is the chairman.
Yes.
And Bruce is very excited about some prospective candidates they have to fill the vacancy by Mary Graff, who did the job excellent for a number of years. Bruce seems to be excited about either of the two candidates applying and taking the senior center in a new direction under new leadership, and that's exciting. And I'd like to leave that to the Council on Aging to conduct interviews, a search, and then report back to the board for appointment.
That's fine, that's just exactly the way I'm thinking.
I'd like
Let it
to-
come from them. I don't have any problem with that.
What about interviews? I'd like to interview the final candidate.
Yep, absolutely. But what would be their recommendations to the
But
board?
Let them recommend it to the board.
Internally first, then if,
Well, there, I believe Bruce said they had two candidates that wanted to apply internally, if
That is
I'm
what he has-
remembering
that is
from
what
the
he has
meeting.
said, yes.
I'd also like David to sit on those interviews with the Council on Aging as our liaison, and then bring that, their recommendation to the board.
That's fine.
Did you want
Any problem
both
with that, or-
candidates to come, Anthony, or?
I think just the recommended one's fine.
Okay.
It's the recommended one?
Yeah. I
Whatever
think
you-
it's fine.
Very good.
Just recommended ones. Right, David?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
David, does that require that position be posted to all current town employees, or that can be limited?
It's really at the discretion of this board or the Council on Aging board, but there's no legal requirements, a non-union contractual position.
very clear that Bruce, and I assume he speaks for the board, is very confident in existing employees.
Yes, we're the board, and we agree. The three of us are on the board,
the three of us, yeah.
That's what we wanted to make sure was going to
Yes,
happen.
yes.
So let me just make sure it's clear, is that the Council on Aging Board, and it sounds like you would want me to be part of that process,
Correct.
is that interview the two ladies that Mr. Holmquist was referring to. Out of those two candidates, make a recommendation to the board. The board would then interview that final person and then make the ultimate appointment.
Well, ultimately, the board is responsible for the appointment, so we're obligated to do that. And
Choose the two and then select one of the two, and then you would interview them?
Yep, that's.
No, you come in with a recommendation, yeah.
Yep, that's exactly.
David, along with your board, will do the interview process.
Oh, he'll send
Your
it
board
on
will
the
vote and make a recommendation to our board for the one to be appointed.
Okay.
Our board will interview that candidate. As long as as long as we're in agreement with your recommendation, then we would vote to appoint that candidate. Your board could vote to open it up to outside. Your board can vote to do your inside candidate you have,
Right.
along with David, as David's assistants, and then that person would come and interview before us, like we did with the building inspector. If your board can't decide on one of them, you can send both of them, and we'll decide between the two.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, all right.
That's a motion.
Make sure that we.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Any other discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
No, just wanted to make sure everything was clear.
Joni, we just appointed you to the position.
No, thank you. If I ever got on the board, my husband will kill me. He wants me to retire from everything.
I was very disappointed I didn't get an invitation to the retirement party, but I wish Mary well when you see her. Tell her I say I wish her well.
All right.
I don't think we're gonna see her.
I know, I think now that she doesn't live around here, we won't see much of her.
The last item on the agenda is in reference to Speedway. You may recall that they were at our most recent meeting on July 20th, and at that point, there was discussion about them removing their storage tanks. At that point, they were requesting to transfer without actually agreeing that they would remove it. The board placed pressure on them to ask them to remove it, and I've spoken to them numerous of times in the meantime. They are in the process of going out to bid to be able to hire a private company that will remove the tanks, and plan on removing the tanks in October. And as that process unfolds, I will certainly keep the board informed.
So there is no need to transfer the license because they're going to be removed.
At this point, I don't think that we need to do that.
Okay.
And at this point, that's my report.
I'd
Okay.
like to make a motion that we send them a letter and ask them to also demolish the existing pumps and
Yeah, to
shack
remove
that's
all,
there.
Move all the
structures. yeah.
structures on the premises.
I'll,
Is there a second to
I'll
that?
second that motion.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so voted.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing else, Dave? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 2, Exception 2, to conduct strategy session in preparation and negotiation with non-union personnel.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Executive session motion. You have something else?
No,
I
no, no.
want to speak to Jerry personally.
Oh, we'll talk to him afterward, all right? All right. I would entertain a motion to enter an executive session, not to return to open session, for the purpose of conducting strategy session in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, specifically the building inspector. Roll call vote.
Getting yes.
Lawrence, yes?
Marreri, yes. We are now in executive session.
Thank you.